Eagles Entertainment.
Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that move, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's beat these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. There we go. Touchdown!
You are listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right, another week, and we're talking about a couple of the Eagles draft picks today as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and as always, I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 333. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I chat with a couple of college coaches, men that have worked with some of the newest Eagles over the last couple of seasons, and I had the pleasure of catching up with. First up, we're going to hear from USC head coach Clay Helton, who worked with Eagles' sixth-round draft choice, Marlon Tuipulotu with the Trojans. We talk about Marlon's athletic background and his personality, what that means for him transitioning to the NFL. Next up, from Coastal Carolina, we've got college football coach of the year, Jamey Chadwell, who I actually talked with over on the Journey to the Draft podcast back in January before the Senior Bowl about the Eagles' sixth-round draft choice, Tarron Jackson. In that interview, we discussed Tarron as he was preparing for his trip to Mobile. Well, now we talk about him as he prepares to move full-time to Philadelphia. So we've got two fun interviews today about two of the newest Eagles defensive linemen. But before we get there, a couple of quick things I want to make sure we hit on. First up, I'm going to ask you guys again, as I do every single episode, head on over to our Apple Podcast page, throw us your support with a rating and a comment. If you've got a question, I will answer it. You know I will each and every week here on the show. So go on to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, leave us your question. We will hit on it next week right here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Also, we'll be continuing our reactions to the 2021 NFL Draft over on the Journey to the Draft podcast, where this week, one of my favorite episodes of the year, it's about to drop, our Journey series, where we go back and revisit all the times we talked about the newest Eagles draft choices before they became Eagles. So you can get our analysis on these guys before they arrived here in Philly and really kind of follow the journey for a number of these players all the way up through the draft process as well as their careers at the college level. Stay tuned for those coming soon over on the Journey to the Draft podcast, wherever podcasts can be found. All right, that being said, let's get this episode rolling. It's time now to dive into our chat with Clay Helton and Jamey Chadwell in Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Well, joining us here today in our one-on-one, USC head coach Clay Helton. Coach, thanks so much for joining us here.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So I want to talk about new Eagles defensive tackle, Marlon Tuipulotu, a player that you know very, very well. We're going to get into what he brings on the field and off the field. I want to first ask you just about the recruiting process with Marlon. I know that he was relatively new to football, didn't start playing organized until his freshman year. What was it like recruiting him out of the state of Oregon?
Yeah, you knew you had this young, raw talent, and his athleticism showed for a man that was a 300-pound plus individual. We kind of knew it was going to be a development project, but we knew that with that investment, some really special things could happen. And that was evident early. You know, when he stepped on campus, his athleticism to be able to hold right at the point of attack, his just natural strength shine through. And we knew he was going to be a great player for us. But as good a player as he was just as good a person and a leader for our football team. So we knew we had the whole package. We're willing to invest in him and his development. And it was neat to see what he's become, which is one of the leaders of our football team and now a great NFL dynamic player headed to the Eagles.
Coach, there's been some written about Marlon's background as a wrestler in high school. For you guys as a staff, when you go into the recruiting process, do you place special emphasis on players that have that multi-sport background? And what is it that wrestling background brings to the table for Marlon playing in the trenches?
Yeah, well, I learned it from my dad. My dad is an NFL offensive line coach for a long time, and he was a wrestler. And he always talked about, if you ever get an offensive lineman or defensive lineman that has wrestling talent, you got a guy that knows leverage, knows how to play low, knows how to use his body and control his body. And it's evident to see that with Marlon. Just himself as a first and second down player and being able to be a tremendous run stopper for us was unbelievable. Where I thought he grew a bunch over this last year was his pass rushing ability on third down. So, you see that wrestling background come into play, and it's yes, it is something that we look at in our evaluation of what other sports kids play, and obviously Marlon getting into that wrestling phase has helped him in his career.
He had said in a recent interview that he did after he was drafted, if he didn't wrestle, he probably would have played basketball. And I think that speaks kind of to that athletic upside, to that background. What have you seen from him on the field in terms of his overall development? You mentioned seeing him jump as a pass rusher this past year as a junior. What were some of the areas that he is really strong in his game right now?
Yeah, when he came into us, he was always a great first and second down player. He's just so physically strong at the point of attack that he just freed lanes up for linebackers. You had to double team. If you tried to put a center or a guard on him, it was not going to be to your benefit, especially on first and second down and run stopping downs. But where he developed, and I was so happy of him being back this last year and for these 6 games that we had. He had put a lot of work into his pass rushing ability on third down and really created havoc on third downs now, which we thought was going to be needed for him to take that next step and really shine and help out in the NFL. And that's where you watch the Utah game. It really stands out to me because he just lived in the backfield that game, created a sack fumble, which led to a touchdown in that game and really separated us in that game. But that's where he's grown the most, and that's what he's worked on the most. I thought being with Vic Soto, our defensive line coach, over this and that friendship and relationship that they have and that belief they had in each other, I really saw a great progression this fall for Marlon, and something that was needed to be a high draft pick like he was. So it's great to see that relationship take place, that growth take place, and obviously it's paying off for Marlon and the Eagles.
You talked about Coach Soto and that defensive line room. Whether it was Marlon, watching Jay Tufele in the past, obviously you have Drake Jackson here for the next couple of years as well. That defensive line group as a whole, the way they chase the football, the play personality kind of jumps off the film. Was that something that was natural to Marlon, or did he just kind of got to get brought into that atmosphere, that culture that is built in that room?
Well, Marlon's always been an effort guy, but when you put effort with culture and what is expected and the standard of play that's expected, like Coach Soto and Coach Orlando, our defensive coordinator, I think it just elevates your game. And that standard of excellence that they put into that room this year, I thought really elevated everybody's game. And you watch Marlon; he was the example. I mean, he was the rock of our defense, and he was the example of what we wanted as a Trojan, just relentless effort to the ball. So when you put talent and you put effort and you put that type of mindset together, that's a special thing, and that's why he was such a high projected kid.
It's certainly something he'll fit in right here. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, they've kind of established that same kind of mentality here in Philadelphia for a decade plus. Coach, the last question for you. You talked about that relentless attitude with Marlon. What is he like off the field, in the locker room? What are some of the things that he brings from a leadership standpoint?
All I can say, he is tremendous in the building. Unbelievable teammate. Puts team over self. He really feels like individual success is a byproduct of the team success. So he's one of those guys that's just an absolute blue-collar worker that's consistent on a day-to-day basis, that just day in, day out, you're getting the same guy. And that's what coaches like. That's what I enjoyed as a head coach. I know Coach Orlando and Coach Soto enjoyed, was just when he walked in the building, you knew who you were getting. A great teammate, a blue-collar worker that gives tremendous effort each and every day, relentless effort each and every day to be his best for the team. And that's all you can want as a coach.
Well, Coach, thanks so much for taking a few minutes with us here in this one-on-one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Best of luck here through the rest of the summer going into the fall.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Compassionate and trusted care. Clinical expertise. It's the cornerstone of NovaCare Rehabilitation and why they're the leading provider of physical therapy throughout the Delaware Valley. Don't let aches and pains or any injury slow you down. Schedule an appointment today at NovaCare.com. The Philadelphia Eagles choose NovaCare, so can you. NovaCare, the power of physical therapy.
Well, excited to be joined here, the head coach of Coastal Carolina, Coach Jamey Chadwell. Coach, you joined us back in January over on the Journey to the Draft podcast, and we talked all about Tarron Jackson going into the Senior Bowl. You and I had no idea at that time that Tarron would end up being here in Philadelphia with the Eagles. And one of the things that stood out to me, going back and re-listening to that conversation, was the relentless energy and the relentless attitude that Tarron brings. Could you just help share with our fans exactly what the Eagles are getting in Tarron Jackson?
Well, yeah, that was when we talked in January. It's crazy. This is how it's worked out for him. I know he's excited about being part of the Eagles family there. But, he's a really good player. Obviously, he was all conference and All-American, all those things. But his motor, his effort, the way that he plays the game, the way he his preparation he puts in is relentless. And I think that's his most important talent is he just has a motor that does not stop. And he was able to get sacks, et cetera, because of that motor. And you're going to get a man there. I say a young man. I guess he's 22, 23. But they're going to get a man there that will do everything possible to help Philadelphia get back to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, whatever it takes. And he'll be a great fit in that community and hopefully be an impact player from day one.
And, Coach, one of the things that stands out to me about Tarron, whether you talk to, obviously yourself, people on your staff, people down at the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy and his crew, everybody just speaks to the character that Tarron brings to the table. Just one of the best guys you could be around. Could you just speak to what he has shown you off the field since you've been down there in Myrtle Beach?
Well, I think that, the thing you share from him, he's obviously, he lost his younger brother leukemia. You guys might know that story, and that's been his greatest motivation, and everything that he's tried to do is to bring a positive light on his family and the way he treats others and the way he treats teammates. And he's a young man that I've got two daughters that you would say, hey, if my daughter could marry somebody like that person there, regardless of his athletic ability, you'd be like high-five him because he's just such a superb young person and he was raised the right way. But the thing that I think he's done a tremendous job here is he brought people along with him. He was not very as a vocal leader early on. He worked hard, but he wasn't a vocal leader. In over these last 2 years, he gained his confidence from a standpoint of being more of a leader and not only watch me, but this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to show you, but I want you to follow. But the reason why I think people followed him was because he didn't have that impeccable character. I mean, he has a mission, and he's not going to let anything interfere with that. And he's going to be outstanding for that community there as far as being involved in community service and those things because he's a genuinely good person.
Coach, when you talk about setting that example for those younger players, what are the things that he would do? Was it just the way that he practiced? Was it the way that he prepared, in the meeting rooms? What were some of the things that he did to bring some of those younger guys along?
Well, I would say this: we had to try to tell him to slow down a lot at practice because he was this no-star recruit, obviously, that had this burning desire, and every day, that's the way he prepared. There was not one time, even when he was getting these accolades, even when he was, an all-conference player last year, 2 years ago, never one time did you think, oh, he feels like he's arrived. It was always that young man that had the chip on his shoulder. And I think what he showed our team and how he brought them along is, one, yes, his work ethic, the way he showed up. But more so, once he got those accolades, a lot of people, once they get something, they feel like they've arrived and they changed. And he's never one time in his life, in the time that I've spent here with him, did he ever change. It was always about the work, bringing people with him, and always putting the team first. Even though he had all these individual goals that he wanted to accomplish, which he has, it was all about what can I do to help this team win at a high level. And that's we share all the time here is what's the legacy you're leaving, and it's got to be more about wins here. And the legacy he left is a work ethic, a character person, the desire, determination that he showed. And everybody, specifically on that defensive side, knows that's the expectations for those defensive players, that you got to put the work in like this.
Coach, he ended up being one of the most productive players in the history of the Chanticleer program. Give us the scouting report. What is it that he brings to the table when he lines up across from an offensive tackle? How is it that he's able to win so consistently?
Well, I think one, he's not the biggest dude in the world as far as length and size, but he has a great balance. He is very physical, very strong, and then he's got a great initial burst. And so you get that initial burst, you get people, especially those tackles, trying to kick slide a little too much. He's able to redirect and get underneath them. And then, again, I go back to his motor. He's going to chase plays down. When other people might get their call, and they might supposed to slant right, slant left, they do it and then cover their gaps. He's going to go out and try to make a tackle every time. He is going to empty his tank on the football field. There will not be one play where those Eagles fans look and say, "Hey, that guy's not emptying his tank for this franchise." And he made a lot of extra plays that most people wouldn't have because of that effort that he played with. And he will lay everything on the field. And he's not going to come off of that until he's exhausted.
That play personality will fit in well in this defensive line room. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox have set the tone there in that department for the last decade or so here in Philadelphia. Coach, last question for you. You talk about that skill set for Tarron, that ability to kind of win with his play strength and power and his urgency off the ball. Today's game, RPOs, quick throws, ball gets out of the quarterback's hand fast. Does that skill set a little bit more valuable than maybe those runaround types as a pass rusher off the edge where, hey, we just need you to get from A to B, and the fastest way to do that is to try and go through the offensive line? Do you feel like those kind of guys bring a little bit more value with the upswing in the RPO game?
I think so, just because, it's hard to protect a quarterback. And so what our offense is doing, they're trying to get the ball out, do a lot of those RPOs, protect those, especially those franchise quarterbacks. So I think if you have somebody that has speed but also can really power and push up, if you can't get to a quarterback, you want to affect him, right? And if you can affect him by pushing that tackle or that guard, whoever it may be, right back in his face, now he can't set those feet as much, and he has to throw with people in his face. And I think that's one thing that Tarron will bring, is he will have a couple extra, he'll have some different ways to rush the quarterback. I think that'll benefit the Eagles defense.
Well, Coach, you guys were so much fun to watch this past year. I know big things ahead for you guys as well in the fall. Stay safe, stay healthy. Best of luck through the rest of the spring, and best of luck here this season.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to talking about our next prospects this coming January.
That's right. Thanks, Coach. Great stuff from Coach Helton and from Coach Chadwell, and you can follow them both on Twitter just like I do. And while you're at it, I'm at Eagles XOs. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce here at Eagles Entertainment. And you know how much I appreciate everyone that promotes this podcast on social media. That's one way to support the show, but the best way is to go on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, leave us a rating and leave us a comment. I want to give a shout out today to someone who did just that. Michael J. Infoman PA left a 5-star review saying, Fran, I really like what Jacoby Stevens said when he interviewed. In my opinion, he showed a high level of football IQ when he discussed the role of a hybrid linebacker safety. Also, he pointed out that he played wide receiver in his freshman year, which gave him a good understanding of receiver route strategy. I'm thinking that his understanding of coverages and the overall defensive scheme may put him in a leadership class of Malcolm Jenkins. What do you think? Well, Michael, first of all, it's a good observation on your part in terms of him having that understanding of the offensive side of the football. Obviously, look, you don't go to LSU and play as a freshman wide receiver unless you've got talent, right? Unless you've got physical ability. So the fact that he went and played as a true freshman down there in the Bayou, I think that does speak to his physical tools. Now, he makes the change over to the defensive side. I talked about Jacoby really going back to last summer over on the Journey to the Draft podcast. I was really, really high on him. This was a guy I thought could make that move to linebacker. Not that I hated him at safety, but I just felt that he showed that comfort level coming up, playing forward, down near the line of scrimmage. And I thought his instincts were a big part of that. And so this is a player that I'm really excited to continue to watch develop over the next few months. Get to see him in rookie camp and certainly in mini camps, and then eventually in training camp as well. He is a really intriguing player and a guy that I think certainly can make that move successfully from safety to linebacker. Now, comparing him to Malcolm Jenkins, that's a pretty tall task. Obviously, Malcolm was a first-round pick at corner, making the move to safety, eventually more towards this linebacker role that he's got now over the last couple of years. And obviously from a leadership standpoint, Malcolm Jenkins brings everything you could obviously hope for. You hope that Jacoby Stevens can get there, but we'll let him grow into that a little bit before we throw that moniker at him. But Michael, it's a good call on your part. He certainly has been impressive in his media availabilities so far. Just continuing with this rookie class, by the way, the Eagles announced on Friday a handful of rookie free agents, guys that were undrafted, that they've signed to contracts. They participated in the rookie minicamp over the weekend. Just want to kind of go through a couple of them, some guys that I had studied on film over the course of the last year. Jamie Newman, a quarterback from Wake Forest previously. He transferred to Georgia a year ago. And then ended up opting out for the season. So he never played for the Bulldogs, but this is a big, strong kid, athletic. He's got a strong arm. I'm excited to see him compete over the course of the summer. Trayvon Grimes is a wide receiver from Florida, and he initially started his career at Ohio State, transferred down to the Gators. He's a big kid, possession type, can play above the rim, went down to the Senior Bowl. I thought he had a solid week down there. He was one of these guys I was surprised, honestly, went undrafted. I thought that he had the ability to be a really nice possession threat in the NFL. And then you look at Jamon Osmond from Texas A&M. He's another player who opted out this past season. He can play inside, outside, maybe more of a kind of a big slot type when you look at his body of work and what he can do over the middle of the field. Jack Stoll from Nebraska, really versatile tight end. This is a guy that can put his hand in the dirt. He can line up in the wing. He can line up in the backfield as a fullback. He could do a lot of different things. I think that those would be some players I would certainly keep an eye on. And then the Buffalo kid, Kayode Awosika, is another intriguing player. Athletic kid, can really operate well in different zone systems. I really liked his ability to get up to the second level, and I thought he was a really nice developmental piece. Another player I was surprised ended up going undrafted. I thought he would end up hearing his name called somewhere in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. Obviously, Eagles get him in undrafted free agency. The only two names that I did not hit on, Jaquan Bailey, the pass rusher from Iowa State, and then Harry Kreider at center. I did not watch either of those two players, but figured I'd share my thoughts on 5 of the Eagles' undrafted rookie free agents. Hopefully, I'll get eyes on Bailey and Kreider over the course of the summer before we get to training camp. So, great stuff today from Coach Clay Helton, from Coach Jamey Chadwell. We'll hear from a couple other college coaches here in the next week here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Thanks so much to Michael for his question. Thank you to all of you as well for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcasts here with Eagles Entertainment. That being said, I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For everybody here at the Duffy House, I am Fran Duffy. We will talk to you next week.
Raise a glass to that comforting feeling of an Eagles touchdown with the all-new Broad & Pattison wine collection created in partnership with Wink, featuring a Cabernet, a Rosé, and a Chardonnay. Broad & Pattison wines are the perfect pairing for any occasion. Now you can bring the sweet taste of victory with you to a dinner with friends or to the tailgate with your game day crew. Purchase online today at philadelphiaeagles.com/wine to stock up and have Broad & Pattison delivered right to your door. A portion of proceeds from every bottle benefit Eagles Autism Foundation.